The postcard today comes from the mecca of international rowing, the place with the newest river and rowing museum, and the home of Mary Blandy. We're in Henley upon Thames in Oxfordshire. The town and ancient borough of Henley on Thames is in the southeastern corner of Oxfordshire, near the borders of Berkshire and Buckinghamshire. Although not mentioned in the Domesday Book, it is confirmed as being founded as a new town in the 12th century as a direct result of the growth of London at that time. Its name is thought to be derived from hen, meaning high, and lear, meaning wood, referring to the view rather than the location itself. Now, I stumbled across Jane Bowen, and I promised you that we'd find out about Henley and its famous bridge. Jane, I didn't know why it was famous. Maybe you can tell me and all my friends.
Well, it's a very stylish bridge. It's also almost on the site of the original 12th century bridge, so it's been a crossing of the river for a very long time. There are remains of archers underneath the Henley Royal Regatta headquarters over on that side, and underneath the Angel pub on this side, so we know that a bridge has been here. And there are pictures of a wooden bridge in the 17th century, so this stone bridge is quite recent. It's only 18th century, so not so old at all.
And much Civil War action around here, wasn't there? Because Charles I, of course, was imprisoned in Oxford, wasn't he, just up the road?
He was there. Henley was a parliamentarian town for most of the Civil War. A few skirmishes, no great battles, but obviously it was a port, and so it was a useful place to be able to bring goods to and fro between London, trying to go towards Oxford. So there was quite a bit of action. All the neighbours seemed to be on opposite sides during the Civil War.
And you say it's a port, and you don't think of Henley as a port, you think of it as the famous regatta town, but you could actually come all the way up from London to here?
Henley was in a very good strategic position. There are only about 5 locks or weirs between London and Henley, whereas there are over 20 between Henley and Oxford. So it made a great deal of sense that if you were transporting grain or timber or food towards London, that you brought it to Henley and put it on a barge here and took it to London, rather than trying to go over all those dangerous weirs further upstream.
See that straight bit of the Thames there? Well, that's very important, and why Henley was chosen for all this rowing.
In 1829, Oxford and Cambridge had their first boat race on this little bit of river.
Right.
So Oxford won,
yes,
but it really started to set quite a trend. 10 years later, the townsfolk were looking at other people who were having regattas and said, we ought to have a regatta in Henley. So they started the Henley Regatta, which later became the Royal Regatta and is still going today, the one that we all know about.
Are there any landmarks along here that we can see, like where it starts and finishes?
Yes, if you look into the distance, you can just see the temple on Temple Island. You see
I
the
can
green
see
roof?
it.
And
right up there, can
yes?
you see that? Right up the very, very end there, yeah. Got that, so that's where it starts?
And that's close to the start, yes.
Yes, and where does it finish?
Almost exactly where we're standing. You're looking across at the winning line at the moment.
Oh, are we? Now it's story time. Are you sitting comfortably in Henley? Let me tell you the tale of Mary Blandy, who lived here in Henley. Now, she fell in love with a Scottish soldier called Captain Cranston. But legend has it, or local folk tell me, that he probably had a wife back up in Scotland, but obviously didn't tell Mary. Now, Mary's dad, Francis, was dead against this liaison, this tryst, this romance. But Captain Cranston sent Mary some pebbles and some grey powder to polish the pebbles, because it was said that he was after her money. So that, of course, if Daddy died, Mary copped the lot. So it was rather strange, you know, that Daddy did die, Francis did die. He was poisoned by Mary, probably with the grey powder. Yes, you've got it. Put it in his food, because many of the servants, too, fell ill. They obviously were trying some of Francis's food that he'd left. Well, Mary killed father, ran across Henley Bridge, was chased by her pursuers, caught, taken to Oxford, tried and executed. I wonder whatever happened to Captain Cranston. What happened to those pebbles? Is there any more of the grey powder left? There's certainly no more of Mary to be seen. Or Francis. Right, there's an old coaching in there, the Red Lion Hotel. This is the road you see from London to Oxford. And it said that Frederick, the Prince of Wales, ate 14 of Mrs. Dixon's finest mutton chops. Big boy. Must have been nice chops. The first existing document relating to the structure of St Mary's Church is a charter of the Corporation Records dated 1272. The early church probably stood mainly on the site of the present nave until 1400, when it was rebuilt and enlarged. Very unusual to find a pulpit carved in marble. Might be soapstone, but I think it's marble. I've never seen one before in all my travelling around churches in this country. Well, there's many treasures inside the church, but there's an even greater one outside. The Chantry House. This is the Chantry, right next door, cuddling up to St Mary's Church in Henley. And that's one of the first schools of the town. And for the very rich boys, it was the King James Grammar School. And if you weren't quite so rich, then you went to the Lady Perriham Bluecoat School. And it was all in that little building over there, which is still as it is, as it was. In historic papers, the Chantry House was called the Chapel House or Schoolhouse, and together with the priest's chambers are late 14th century, early 15th century. The original chapel would have been served by the Dorchester canons or monks from further up the Thames, and this would have probably been their home. I'm in the Chantry now, and this is one of the oldest buildings in Henley. More importantly, it is one of the buildings which is used every day. It's in everyday use, but has barely changed from how it was. And they're trying to do lots and lots of restoration here. So if you're very lucky, you could turn up on a day in Henley at the Chantry and get some lovely homemade cakes, and you can help restore this building. And we must do all we can to keep this country's heritage. Henley's, Britain's, the world's. Come and do your bit. Buy a fairy cake. Lend us a few bob. It's worth keeping.